Welcome again to the Studiospares Lockdown podcast, in which we talk to professionals in different parts of the music and audio industries about the effects of the virus and lockdown. And importantly, we also look to the future and think about post-lockdown and what it means to musicians, voiceover artists, agencies, venues, and other parts of our industry. In this episode, I speak to Pete Mills, who, as well as being owner of Sand Hill Studios and longtime technician for Elton John, Pete is also one of the founders of Peex, an innovative system that allows the individual gig-goer to control mix elements of a live concert. So welcome, Pete. How are you, mate?
That was fantastic.
I'm doing my best.
Yeah,
you know, words. How are you doing? Are you well?
Yeah, very well. Thank you very much. Yeah, sort of tucked away down in Guildford here. Yeah, it's all good.
All locked up and keeping safe. That's the main thing.
Yeah. I mean, mine's been a little bit of an anomaly, really, because this is my job, so I've had to sort of come here to sort of maintain the studios and keep everything ticking over. All the guys have their own rooms, so everybody's been isolated.
Right.
And we've all been sitting in the courtyard, opposite ends of the courtyard and stuff like that, and drinking coffee and talking and stuff. So it's actually, I feel like I'm very, very lucky that I haven't actually, can you imagine being cooped up in a flat or something like that? So very, very lucky. Yeah, very lucky.
Like my little room, you mean?
Yeah.
So actually, tell us a bit about Sand Hill Studios, because you have recording as well as rehearsals as well, don't you? So
yeah. We've got, it goes back a long way. It's been here a long time. When my band, in the early days, in the 80s, when we were managed, I'll talk to you about this later, but when we were managed by John Glover, we needed somewhere to rehearse, and Mum and Dad had this place as a sort of, like a fun place for the kids, riding school, for the girls, they had their own horses and stuff like that. So, and that's where it all started from. They kind of moved off after 10 years and decided to disappear to Wales and do their thing down there. And I ended up sort of, I might as well stay here. So I took over the lease, took over the rent, etc., and then started to, all the buildings that me and my brother and my dad had actually built over the years. We slowly started to convert them into those little tiny sort of bijou sort of studio rooms,
production suite. So
yeah, well, it started with my own thing, really. The good old fashioned B16. Well, it was 8 TAC 8-track before that, and a Fostec 4-track before that, and all that sort of stuff through the whole. The whole era, if you like, into digital. And then basically just sort of branching out from that, Sand Hill became all the extra little peripheral rooms around the outside. Yeah, you can rent that one. So it became, and it is all, believe it or not, it's all musicians, mainly drummers, would you believe? So I'm in the middle of the field, in the middle of nowhere, yeah. So being in the middle of nowhere, I've got Richard Brooke, who does all ABC and all that sort of stuff, all of the 80s stuff. There's Matt, who he did a tour with Kylie Minogue. He's another drummer. I've got another guy that does all the theatre stuff up in London.
Okay.
And then there's various other people. And then my main guy is, if you look on the website, it comes up as Masterlink, and that's James. And he's kind of my right-hand man here. He's got his own Pro Tools studio as well.
Right.
And that's kind of how it all developed over that period of time, basically. So rehearsal studios ticking over in the background. And
you have one of the artists that I used to play with. We've had Hazel O'Connor in there.
Yeah. She was in. It was last year. She was booked to come in again this year, April. But that obviously all got cancelled pretty quickly. So, but she previously, like I think it was last November, December, that we had tour because they were doing a joint tour. Yeah. Toya and Hazel O'Connor. Yeah. So they came here. It's great. But then we had Robert Fripp sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee and chatting to everyone. It was just like bonkers. But yeah, we've done all of those types of people. Procol Harum rehearse here all the time.
And to be fair, it's a great facility, because obviously I've been down there, but you're not quite in the middle of nowhere, but you're really well situated just outside of London, really accessible. But it's out the way. It's you've got to drive way up.
No. We've been really, really lucky, and we've got a fantastic relationship with the local parish council, and we've got a great relationship with the locals as well. actually the house down the road there, literally
Right.
straight down there, is the vicar who married me and my wife, Michelle.
Right.
And then on the corner, he's actually after a little bit of my land at some point, but I'm keeping him in the bag just in case I need it. You know what I mean?
I know.
Great. Yeah, it's been great. And, you know, we did it all correctly. You know, we went through the right processes, got all of our planning permissions, et cetera, health and safety and so on and so forth. Because obviously there's a lot of stuff I do here because it's kind of a farmyardy type thing.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of stuff I do, but it's all done with health and safety in mind and making sure everybody's safe. All the kids, any kids come up, they're only allowed in a certain area. They can't go off into the fields and hurt themselves or any of that, all that sort of stuff. So it's all pretty well controlled.
That's probably why I couldn't get into the field then, because you
well, no, I did at that point. I hadn't given you the gate code. So
that's right. Yeah. So tell us a bit about Elton, because obviously you worked for Elton for years. So
I did an official 26 years, and when Peex came to, you know, when Power Chord is the company and Peex is the product. When they came to me, the boss said, you know, look, are you going to concentrate on that one? To be really honest, I didn't really fancy a 3-year world tour.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for 35 years, touring for 35 years.
So, so who else did you tour with before?
Well,
Elton?
before Elton was your Go Wests and your Beverly Cravens, and I did Gillan and Glover and loads of other stuff, and so on. And then the Elton thing came along, and obviously that took precedence really because it was the best money, and it was.
How did you get that gig?
That was actually. I mean, if you want to go back historically, I mean, everything's linked, isn't it? And basically, Johnny Glover kept me on board as after my band failed, Blueprint Management, and said, "Do you want to look after Go West?" So my first official pro gig out of finishing all of that TIAC and Fostec studio stuff and so on, and getting it ready for digital, as that all hit in the early 90s, the digital stuff where you actually switched from ADAT tapes to the computer. Oh my God.
I remember it well.
all of the audio's on the computer. It's going to go horribly
Anybody with grey or white hair, like respectfully, remember that. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So we did all that. And I mean, what an amazing thing we can do now, considering we used to say, wouldn't it be great if we could take those vocals and just put them there?
Yeah.
And in the old days, you had to do it with a bit of tape and splicing and pushing the Revox button and all that nonsense. It was great fun. And everybody remembers that really, really fondly. But you think, my God, you used to sit there for about an hour a day just waiting for the tape machine.
Spinning vocals in.
the whole, whole thing. But sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
That's
so
right.
Go back to, Johnny Glover, Go West, Beverly Craven, and then obviously Charlie Morgan was drumming for Beverly Craven, and we hit it off. Like, I was stage manager, production manager, and we just hit it off, you know, and we kind of latched onto each other, and he got what he needed, you know, because he's quite a, you know, because of his talent, you know, they're sort of like quite neat, you know, it's a horrible word to say, but needy people, needy musician type thing. But he's really, really a cool guy. And that's how the Elton thing started. I got a phone call after Beverly Craven finished, and he said, look, I've just been offered the Elton John gig back, because he'd had it before. He'd had it in the late 80s or something like that. So anyway, he's got offered that he did 2 or 3 albums with Elton and everything, leather jackets and so on. And he called me up one day and said, look, I know it's a step backwards from stage manager or production manager, but would you come and be my drum tech? So I went. I knew nothing about drums. So I learned everything I learned about drums and drum teching. I learned on the fly, winging it with Charlie, pretending I knew what I do. I knew what I was doing, and so on. And that's how I got into it, kind of thing. And he called me up and said, look, you know, talk to Keith Bradley if you're interested, and the rest is history, because it was a no-brainer.
And you moved on from being a drum tech, and you ended up being a keyboard tech, effectively, didn't you?
Well, the drum teching thing went on for about 8 years. So we did like 3 or 4 world tours, you know, with Charlie and Elton, and a few of us did other things in between, et cetera, et cetera. And then the Charlie thing kind of went a bit pear-shaped for him. And then my daughter was born, and I said, I don't want to be on the road all the time when my daughter's when my daughter's just about to be born. So I said, no, Keith, I'm really, really sorry, but I'm going to have to sidestep it. He went, oh, don't worry about it. It's all right. I'm sure there's lots of other bits and pieces we can do with you or whatever, because he obviously sussed out, you know, I could do this and I could do that. and then it turned into all these other different hats, as in,
okay.
we don't have a guitar tech for Davey Johnson. Can you come and look after Davey? So I did like a whole tour and loads of stuff with Davey. And that included obviously the bass player Bob Birch as well at the time. And then I've done a few bit of Tony Smith, mate, your mate and my mate. Yeah. I've helped him out a couple of times when he's not been able to do certain bits. So I did a bit of keyboard tech in as well.
Yeah.
And then Keith sat us down one day, me and Dale Sticker, who's the main Elton piano tech, who Elton, can't do a gig without him.
Right.
But if he has to do a gig without him, Keith had a dilemma on his hands, as in how does he keep Elton happy?
Yeah.
So we were in a gig. We were in this bonkers gig in, I think it was in France somewhere, like Versailles or something, like the Versailles Opera House before they tore it down, and it was 70. It was like going back to the 1700s. Right. And we were sitting on the stage. And you're looking up and everything's wooden. You go down in the basement and there's all these wooden wheels with all the ropes. And oh my God, I've never seen anything like it. Anyway, we're sitting on stage and Keith said, look, I need some cover. Would you be happy? And Dale and I were best mates on the tour for the whole of the Charlie Morgan bit.
Yeah.
Kind of how Dale got the gig in the first place, because he covered me for a little bit at the very beginning and then got the gig with Elton. So we were all happy. Everybody was in, having a great time. And he said, would you look after Elton on the odd, one-offs or corporates? Because corporates come 15 a year at huge amounts of money, rather than fly the whole American crew over to do a gig in Russia or a gig in wherever, Abu Dhabi or Dubai or wherever. He could have a crew over here, i.e., especially on the solo shows, it would be me. So it was me, and there's other companies involved that did those kind of gigs all the time. I actually got to stare down the barrel of the gun as well.
And because he was doing those, he did a whole string of shows, didn't he, with Ray Cooper?
Well, yeah, Ray's been in and out, my whole career. He was there, when I first started in 92, so we did 92 to 94, 95, something like that. And then Ray came back in and did Brunei. Everybody did Brunei at the time. Right. Everybody went to Brunei for the Sultan of Brunei or Prince of Brunei and did gigs out there. Tina Turner, Michael Jackson, everybody. Yeah. So we were out there. We had a great time, actually, because we had Bryan Adams with us. So we had Bryan Adams. Right. Yeah, well, Bryan Adams, his band turned up with no crew. So the Elton John, Tony looked after such and such. I looked after Mickey Curry. Rick Salazar looked after, guitar player. His name slipped my memory, but they're lovely, lovely people.
Yeah.
So that was the Brunei side of things. And then Ray was on the main tour. Then, for whatever reason, he wasn't on the main tour. And then, obviously, 2011 is when the Vegas thing started.
Right.
The second run of Vegas, which became a different show because Ray was involved, and they used his big, the big gong and the big thing,
the full setup.
The way he does his thing, it's just absolutely bonkers. And so the Red Piano was the first tour, the first set of Las Vegas shows.
Yeah.
And then the
that was a Caesars as well. Was that a Caesars as well?
Yeah. And then I got, it's really, really unfortunate, but poor our lovely guy, Bill Harrison, who was Ray's main tech and had worked for The Who and knew Keith Bradley since the beginning. Everybody knew everybody. It was amazing. Yeah. Unfortunately, he kind of passed away, and I got offered Ray's gig because Ray knew me from looking after Charlie.
Right. Okay.
And with that connection, he said, "Well, would you come and do that?" And it's like, "Yeah, I can tune a timpani," not knowing anything about it. There's no electronics involved, so it was the best gig ever.
Oh, right. Once you're set, you were set.
Yeah, I mean, it's just brilliant. And just making sure
they're raised congas there. Raised bongos there, aren't they?
Yeah. There are a set of LPs that we got sent over to the UK because we had to double up his set. So he had two systems, one in Vegas and one in the UK, one in Europe. And then when it goes on a world tour, those systems can then leapfrog, because Elton's actually got 3 complete backline systems. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I did.
So, so that they can actually leapfrog. Oh, that one's going there. This one's going there. And then when that one's done, that will go there.
And of course, as you say, he did these solo shows. So I remember Tony telling me at one point that they would be leapfrogging these like full rigs, and then he would go fly off somewhere in between and do a solo show wherever, and then come join the tour and so hugely.
Well, when the tour was, when I wasn't on the tour full time, as in, I was bringing up my daughter and having a great time with her kind of thing, that was when I used to get the call for the sort of week here and a week there.
Right, okay.
Because the tour would be out and they couldn't risk, anything happening to that that was a different system that did that gig. So
Yeah.
they didn't use the touring system.
No,
Then they used a different crew. And there was Simon Hodge was our monitor guy, who's front of house for Robbie Williams.
Yeah.
And so on and
I've
so
met
forth.
Simon, actually.
Oh, he's lovely.
Yeah, really nice guy. And of course, it's not just when it's set up; it's when it's broken down and it's in the truck. Everything has its place, and you know what's there. So to take elements of it just for a quick gig off somewhere else is just not viable. Yeah.
No, it doesn't work. And the corporates are literally just Elton. So you turn up, as long as you've got a grand piano and we had a spare grand piano. Well, I say a spare grand piano. We had 5 black grand pianos that were on the tour all the time. And the one that I got to use most of the time for the corporates with Adrian Colley was the sort of production guy for Elton. He was his old production guy from the 70s, and still running the yard, if you like. He would do all of the logistics, etc., etc. Right, and Winifred was my piano. That's the piano that I used to use.
They all had names.
Yeah,
Did you remember them all?
Winifred Atwell, Nina Simone, Aretha Franklin. I'm gonna struggle now, aren't I? There's one more. Hang on, Winifred, Nina, Winifred, Kay, can't remember her name, and oh God, we got a red piano as well, and there's a name for that, but I can't remember.
Right.
I think that might be Nikita, actually.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Okay. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, you could probably Google it.
Yeah. Let's go and check it out.
But then there's the original. But there's the original piano, which was the first time Elton switched to Yamaha from Steinway.
Yeah.
And that piano was called Diana.
Right. Okay.
Can you believe? And it was the one that was used at the church, the cathedral, and so on and so forth. And that one, I know where that one is, and I have seen it since. And it's in temperature controlled storage, and one day that will come back out and be part of his legacy.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Well,
beautiful.
So obviously you've been on the road for years, and obviously you've been running Sandhill at the same time. So then you came up with Peex. Just I know Peex. I know what it is. I've experienced Peex, so I know exactly the results and what it does. But maybe you could explain exactly what the system is and what the benefits are for the user.
Well, with a bit of explanation as to how it came about as well. Maybe.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so well, I mean, Graham and I are the sort of co-founders, of the company. So we kind of come up with the idea together. Kind of me more from the logistical, how do you do that sort of thing, and him how are we going to do the tech side of things, because he was a lot more tech savvy with regards to dealing with high tech companies. And we sort of said, he basically said to me, went and saw a gig, sounded terrible. And I said, well, funny enough, I've been listening to Elton's gigs on my in-ears all my career. So that's why I've still got my hearing, I think.
Yeah.
And I have a fantastic sound every night. And we just sort of sit there. I said, well, it'd be amazing, if you could if everybody could hear what I heard. Yes. So that's kind of how over a cup of coffee and a couple of beers in the pub and that's how that all started. And he said, well, I've got this investor guy that's interested in such and such. I wonder whether we could get sort of a system where we could deliver a delivery system to deliver that audio to everybody in the venue. Right. And that's basically how it started. He then went off and did his thing and went to RTX. I held Elton in the bag. I had Elton in the bag, but held it back from introduction to power chord and Peex, just in case the feasibility study and the proof of concept and any of those things didn't work. Yeah. We found this company in Denmark that actually came up with the goods, and they kind of made it. They kind of made it. Obviously, got paid for it, kind of thing. But we own all the patents for all the ideas, etc., etc.
Just tell us exactly what it does.
As Elton's probably the easiest way to sort of explain it is that I take a feed I can take a feed from anywhere. I need an audio feed of either the 5 stems that the front of house guy is happy to give me, or as with Elton, I take a 90 channel feed from Alan, Elton's monitor guy. Right. That's where I get my MADI split. I get my MADI split from him, and that goes back into our relationship with all the gear and all that sort of stuff. Early doors. We now take it into our little Sack and Saw software audio console and software audio workstation software, which is part of the early days as well, because I found that software through Keith Bradley and Alan, Elton's monitor guy, and just went, wow, this is really simple but really, really effective. So I get all 90 channels from Alan of
Yeah.
Elton's show, everything you want, all of Ray, everything. And then what we do is we basically mix that show. We've mixed it in various different environments, and we tend to find it's best to sort of mix it at the gig, because you get all of the noise and all the sounds and all of the everything, because that's how it was always imagined it would be, that we would never be in an isolated room to mix the show. So what we do is we create these 5 stems out of all 90 channels.
Yeah.
So all of the drums down to 1 stem, all of the other, all of the bass, all of the guitars, keyboards, etc., down to those 5
each
stems.
stem mono or stereo, or are they all mono?
Well, no, everything on our system everything runs in mono.
Right.
And that was again through testing. We did all the testing at Sand Hill Studios. Actually, we had all the transmitters up in the fields, and we set towers up over there, and the recording equipment was over there, all the playback equipment initially. And that's how we sort of worked all that out, as to how to create all those kind of stems and then the other thing was that I was really aware, because of my background, as in, certain musicians, shall we say, I mean, with the Elton band, don't get me wrong, they're all fantastic, and they all play their backsides off all the time, and everything's 99.9% of the time perfect.
Yeah.
But you would normally get sort of a lead singer that maybe not quite cut it in the live environment. So we had to sort of bear that in mind as well. And it was like, well, okay, what we could do is, there's a lead vocal track, but what we could do is with the software we've got, we create these groups, and there's the rest of the band like this.
Yes. Yeah.
So if it was a vocalist, for argument's sake, we've never come across it. We've done Tony Hadley, Peter Cox, Nick Kershaw, all those guys, all great singers, all just really good fun guys that just don't, they says, knock yourselves out. But we always had this element of, like, on that vocal track or any of the 5 stems, that we could bring the rest of the band in, so somebody wasn't naked.
Okay.
It wasn't a naked vocal. So with Elton, it's Elton's vocal and piano. Luckily with Elton, we're able to bring all the backing track is really, really quiet.
Right.
So when you get to, obviously we then distribute, skipped a little bit here, but out of our system, we then distribute that. We create an analog air gap. So I'm synced to Alan for all the audio coming in. We created an air gap through the ferrofishes that we used.
Yeah.
Then we then sync to the multiplexer that then does the transmission around the building. And that's how we do it. And then obviously there's an app that controls the receiver, and there you go.
Let's just explain that as well.
Go on.
So basically you have a disc receiver as a gig goer. You have the disc receiver, which has a pair of headphones coming out of it.
Correct.
You'd put into your ears, and then you on your phone have an app, your receiver, and you then have those 5 stems that you can mix appropriately. So you might have, in the case of Elton, for example, you have vocals and piano.
Correct.
And then you might have bass, and then
Love it.
Bass, guitar, drums, and whatever else is in the other keyboards. Right. So
other keyboards.
The user then gets the opportunity to, especially, I mean, for me, the O2 is one of the worst venues that you can go and see a gig at. However, not that I would say that publicly, but if you're up on the sides, you don't always get the mix that you want. So just being able to poke that vocal up a little bit, or bass, or whatever the case may be, makes it a totally different experience. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you, mate, because when I came to that gig, I was really unsure of what to expect, and the thought of having headphones or earbuds in at a gig were just I didn't get it. Don't get me wrong, I just didn't get it. Now that said, when we went down there, because we went to you and I went to the mix area, but we also went to the back, where it's just about the worst place in a stadium to listen to a gig. And I have to say, I was stunned on just how in your face it was. It was just I was at the gig still. I wasn't being separated from the crowd.
I mean that's all. I mean that's like 5 years of development. Well, we were 3.5 years, 4 years into it.
That was just you were still in beta, wasn't
but we were, that was all discussed around the meetings that we had in the company, within the company. This was all probably all decided probably within the first 2 years.
Yeah.
That you know, you can't isolate people. So we had those little earpieces made specially.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether you got to try those or they came later. So you might have just been on a generic set of headphones.
I think I was generics. Yeah.
Yeah, but what happened was we ended up with our own little we had them made for ourselves with a short cable, so it went straight in, so you didn't have lots of cable and stuff like that. And then we had earbuds that kind of were generic ones that sort of fitted everybody, but we know everybody's ears are different. But the most important thing was not to isolate somebody, and to allow, if you're at the back of the gig, you want to feel the visceral energy of the gig and the atmosphere, etc., etc. But because these weren't enclosed, and you had enough headroom on the head amp on the RX to literally, I mean, it's a thing of beauty as far as I'm concerned, because you can hear all this, like, I think I know what's going on with the band, and all the guitar players come up front and you can't hear a thing or whatever, because of the anomalies of the room. It's not sort of slagging anybody off or anything. It's just the anomalies of rooms and the dead spots you get around arenas and stadiums. And to just literally take anything from, you've got nothing, and then just to lace in what you want to lace in, boom, and there it all is. It's like, I mean, acoustic guitar is classic to me.
Yeah. It just feels like you can be anywhere and not be, effectively punished.
I mean, there's so much documented now of everything we've done.
Yeah.
About all those sort of scenarios. Where you stand behind the front of house desk, and you've got two massive, great big sets of speakers 40 or 50 meters away, and you stand behind the front of house desk, behind the tent, if you like. Walk out to one side, no bass. How does that work? Walk to the other side, no bass, and you go, what? Where? And that's what you're fighting. It's just a really, really, really hostile environment. And with regards to Peex, the idea was to put back what you've lost.
We're going to see Peex everywhere, I think, in the near future.
That's kind. Because, so.
I mean, it's just a brilliant system, and I would urge anybody that hasn't got the the concept of what we're talking about here to go to peex.live. That's PEEX.live, and Elton's on there telling you about it, because Elton's an investor as well, isn't he? So
he's a shareholder.
The shareholder.
So him and David are both joint shareholders.
Okay, so but they're behind the project, and they get it.
Yeah, I mean, somebody said to me, one of the guys said, and it kind of made me feel good, because obviously the Elton, the introduction to Elton came through me, which was lovely, was that the amount of marketing and PR that we got just by being part of the Elton John tour was, astronomical. The value is astronomical. Whether marketing got it right or not, that's a conversation you and I can have at some other time. But whether they got it right at the time, but we're still here, and we're looking to go head on into it. We're a lot set up in America even with the lockdown. With regards to drive-in movies, driving shows, whatever.
There are a million applications that, as we move forward, we'll see. And I think every musician will experience it, and every gig-goer will experience it at some point. It's just it's the beginning of the technology, so it's quite exciting. But it then brings up a good point, really. And as you said, the everything's happened with the virus over the last few months has just been horrific, as we all know, and it's had a huge bearing on live industry. And for somebody such as yourself, whose career, other than the studios, has been based around the live industry, what you're seeing out there at the moment must look horrific.
Well, I mean, I kind of with Peex and working from here and so on, and the guys, with Richard, everybody's sort of active in the music business. I mean, I've literally just had a coffee with Dougie, the drummer that plays up at, he was the drummer in Book of Mormon.
Right.
And you can imagine, chink, that was it. And it's like, okay, what am I going to do now then? And nothing, they've done nothing other than what they have been getting into, which I think is something you want to talk about a bit later, is the online side of things, where, you can do, right, he gets a request to do something, he does it here. I've got my studio next door as well, which has got a green screen in it as well, by the way, so we can do sort of mini green screen stuff. He does his audio, sends his audio off, and then Richard actually teaches online and so on. So that came out of nowhere, because they had to. They all had to. They kind of scramble. It was full squadron scramble, really, to sort of work out, okay, how are we going to survive this? Luckily, we got a little bit of help from the local council. with all the rate pay, all the rate, because it pays individual rates on each individual room, so they all got a little bit of a leg up there. So at least that meant the studios were still sort of like being able to sort of survive. To run as what it is, pay the bills and stuff. Me, I'm just going to sit tight and see what happens. I'm going to hang on to Peex.
What about Elton? Do you know where they were when it kicked in?
They came back from. I was like, "Are you guys okay?" We're just on our way back from Australia. So they literally just finished the end of the Australian tour, which was into March.
Okay.
So, and I know, because most of the Americans that were on the Elton tour were employees. Excuse me. Most of the Brits, I think, like Tony Smith and Simon, were freelance, so they were done. Simon, I've seen Simon a couple of times. Who's the chap that actually took my place looking after Ray, and he's a technician that we worked on. Who did we work on? We worked on Cat Stevens together, and Cliff Richard and people like that. And that's it. He's gone back to building. So it's really, really sad from that point of view. I think Tony's all right because he's still pottering, doing his keyboard rigs and stuff. He's always got lots of work to do on keeping those.
Let's just think about, coming back now. I mean, as we sit here and record this today, there are some of the restrictions are being loosened, and we're allowed to go and do a few bits here and there, but there's also talk about another outbreak in Beijing. We know that especially South America has been hit very badly in Brazil, so one would expect that there's going to be a serious spread there. So we're probably still quite a way off of the major tours at least happening.
Yeah,
we had Brett Hume actually who runs a pub locally last week. And
you're the other pod guy. I saw that.
So he was talking about even for them, which is a small venue, controlling that tiny environment, it's just hopeless. So to do that in a stadium or a large theatre or whatever, it's just a no-go. So in your mind, how do you think we're going to get back from this position where we are now to filling out stadium again or getting back to festivals?
I think if we use Peex as an example, they've got some sort of, everybody's sort of seen a little bit of that's a good idea, we could do this, and it would enable. So it's a lot of things, a lot of common sense needed, but a lot of things that will actually enable to get back to doing something, and then obviously maybe a vaccine and so on and so forth. But like you say, if there's other strains of it, and God knows how long it's going to go on for. So I think the idea of this drive-in thing, which we're working with American companies in the States at the moment, where
physically, just to be clear on this, so this is physically somebody will be able to go into a car park like the old drive-in movies.
It's exactly what.
A couple of people in the car, they'll be able to go in and either use like a small speaker system or something like a system, which would be much more favourable to enjoy it in the gig. So do you think it's going to be much of that? I mean, I know there are certain churches, gospel churches in America that are already playing to car parks effectively.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a way, but I mean, obviously you've got some sort of weird things going on. If you think of if you do, there's talk of us doing an outdoor show in Napa Valley, 1,500 cars.
Right.
Okay. And the theory is that they set a big stage up, big video screens, the same as a normal gig, line all the cars up. And then what's the downfall is that everybody's got windscreen in front of them.
Yep.
Or they cordon off X amount of space. So you can have that space and you're X amount of space away from that person next to you and so on. So you can have chairs and so on and so forth. Then you all get back in your car again, then you all drive out. So that kind of works. And the idea there would be, well, in the old days, we needed line of sight to do our thing. And the interest is that if we bring our transmitters lower down and go sideways with our transmissions and all the windows are open, then you start to get the bouncing around for the RF to work properly. So we've done all the tests here and we did all that behind windscreens. Even with windscreens, it still works. So I think now the only thing there is if you don't have a system like Peex to enhance that, then you've lost it.
Yeah.
And so our idea is to, if we could get, or when we get the first one away, it's going to be a bit of a revelation that they're going to go, I tried it where I took a quarter-inch a mini jack, plugged it into my RX, plugged it into my aux in the car. It was like sitting in the studio. It was amazing. We were only doing playback on Elton kind of thing. But if you could do that, that would be an incredible thing to do sitting in the car. If not, you're outside the car. I don't know, they're going to want to spend a fortune on a big...
The issue is because I think you and I have touched on this before, but you could effectively send it, via FM or find some way of plugging into everybody's car systems, which actually would give an amazing sound inside. However, there's always going to be latency issues. There's always going to be like a major delay of some description. You're virtually... You're stuck in your car listening to it. It's not, you haven't got that engagement, the connection. So
I think it's going to be it's going to be an awkward one. I mean, luckily with our system, providing they've got a PA that pumps out enough volume, with our system, the fact it's got the microphone in it and it's got what we call a delay compensator, an algorithm that actually works out where you are in relation to the stage. So I'm hoping that might sort of work for these types of gigs. Other than using a system like I don't understand. I don't understand how people are going to get that excited about it, because I think it's going to be a bit of a wet squib, really, because you can't, you're not together. Do you know what I mean? All that, the whole dilemma is, hideous, isn't it? The fact that
absolutely
we can't be together.
What about going online? I mean, I've done a couple of fun tracks and everything. You put that's all good fun, and that's me just being. That's me just wanting to play bass, if I'm honest. But nobody else will play with me. That's the problem. But so that's quite a nice outlet as a musician. You get to play, you can put something up. You can work with somebody remotely. It's really, really good. However, musicians have got.
Somebody just pulled up outside.
Oh right.
Sorry.
That's all right. But the thing is, musicians have got and crews and everybody have got to start making money again soon. We won't survive on the other side of this, or people won't, or some people won't survive on the other side of this. So, how does that online opportunity? What point do you think people who are watching or enjoying the content are going to pay for it?
I don't know. It's a real difficult one, isn't it? I mean, I think a lot of us, I was talking to Elton's tech today, Dale, and he's got a similar setup to me. We kind of got like parallel lives, if you like. He's got his studios and stuff, and he's, it's almost like we've become hermits, really, because we're sort of retracted into our places, into our buildings and now where we work. And now we're all sort of sitting there scratching our heads going, well, okay, now what can we do? And I think obviously live streaming takes a little bit of, you've got to have reasonable connection, et cetera, to make live streaming work. But maybe, that will be more of the norm. I don't know. But how many people, I don't know. I don't know whether that would, for me to say, oh, Coldplay are doing a such and such, and you can watch the show and you pay 10 quid and you can sit and watch it in your house at home and all this sort of stuff. It's not quite the same thing as going to a gig, is it? So it's a real dilemma, and how the marketing people and how everybody's going to sort of piece that together to sell it. I don't know.
It's effectively pay to view, isn't it? It's like watching the boxing.
And
I think, it is a little difficult with bands, because the question is, I'm not saying this is the case, but are we all used to now being able to watch, I'm sure if I go on YouTube, I'll find a great Elton John gig. I can certainly find a Beyonce or whatever. I can go and see a full gig there and get the experience, and I can have a great setup at home and listen to it and, dance with my friends if I want, it's there. So would I be prepared to take that and pay for it? That's a different question. So, the
thing is that they've lost that, if you think of the gig, and you're at the gig and you're doing you're in a stadium you're in an arena and so on and so forth. I likened it to going and see one of the Beatles shows in Vegas, and I just went, you know what? I was at the show. Anybody could have walked up to me and said, "Do you want to buy this?" I'd have bought anything. Now that's the moment there. Now we've lost that. That's gone. So how do we create that outside of actually physically being there? Oh, that's a big ask. I'm not sure there's a lot of people out there have got the answer right now. I know I'm kind of like struggling with it.
It's difficult, isn't it? It's really difficult. Everybody I've spoken to has all said the same, which is we have to find a way through until people go into venues.
I mean, I'm hoping, my hope is that I'd be first in line to sort of start helping local pubs or whatever, once they get going. I'm thinking, well, there's a social distancing side of things, so you've only got a certain amount of people. Let's get some of these young kids that are out there that can't do anything, and try to help them, get them in, how you make it all work financially more than anything. The young kid's going to come in and play for nothing, to try and sort of at least give something back to those pubs and clubs that have, been part of our lives for so long. I'm sure that unfortunately a lot of them are going to have struggled through this and might not be there at the other end, but let's hope most of them do come through. But if I could go and get some guys from down the street and take them to the local pub and be there to help them, PA and so on and so forth. I think there's got to be a bit of a everybody mucking in kind of scenario.
Yeah, there's definitely a trend. I mean, I've certainly spoken to, actually on this cast, I've spoken to at least a couple of people about there being a sense of responsibility from the musician as much as there is from the venue. And whilst, the O2s of the world are, a different proposition at ground level, so to speak. We need to help the venues get back on their feet. That's my personal view. My band, for example, have offered to play free for a few venues locally, in an effort to to help get audiences back in, and at least get the momentum going. But we can't obviously do that until we're it's safe to do so. And everybody
well, there's that sort of element to it as well, but then there's also the element of the cash that people would normally have to go out and enjoy that time, but that element has changed as well. And you've got to think, well, maybe there's got to be some help there as well, with regards to getting people in. I watched I think I mentioned to you earlier on before we started this, that some of the gigs that they were hoping to set up in America, the ticket prices were like absolutely ridiculous. Now there's an element of everybody's gagging for it because everybody's busting to get out. But common sense says, well, I'm not going to, we've got to be careful with money now. We've got to be so the whole thing has got to be thought through. And as many people, and also as many people within the business as well. So your publicans and your guys like us that have been doing it a long time, and I just love doing it, and I do stuff for free all the time. So is for us all to get back involved again. Once it gets down to there's a vaccine and the pubs come back online, and and then the beers aren't quite as expensive because people haven't got as much money. That's great. And then with the gigs, the guys that come in and play for the gigs, they don't charge as much money, and so on and so forth, to just try and help to rejuvenate and regenerate that.
Maybe we should all campaign for a government assistance for every gig goer to get 3 pints of beer each or something. Freebies,
absolutely.
That'd be the way forward. Well, listen, Peter, this has been fascinating, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, mate. Really appreciate it.
I hope we didn't go too far off piece, did we?
Listen, I'm sure everything's been incredibly interesting, so it's been great. And I hope your studios are full and running at full capacity soon. And I'm hoping that
we'll all be back to normal. If it's not this year, then definitely everybody back to normal next year. Try and get some normality back. It'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. It's been great fun, man.